Hello and welcome to the Sacred Truth Channel. Today I want to take you on a journey that goes far beyond a simple summary. A journey through the most influential, deepest, and most transformative story ever recorded, the Bible. But before we begin, I want you to understand something important. This is not just a book. It is not just a collection of ancient stories. It is a narrative that spans centuries, that has shaped civilizations, transformed lives, and that still today confronts the human heart in a way that few can completely ignore. So as you listen, I want you not just to hear, but to reflect, because this is not just a story about the past. It is a story that in some way speaks directly to you. The Bible begins with something that completely changes the way we understand everything around us. The beginning of all things. In the book of Genesis, we are taken to a moment when everything was still empty, without form, without direction, and then something happens. God creates. Not out of necessity, not by accident, but with purpose. He creates light, separates the waters, forms the land, establishes order where there was once chaos. And this already reveals something essential. The universe is not an accident. It is intentional. Every detail carries meaning. Every element has a function. And at the center of this creation, something different from everything else appears. The human being. And here is a point that many ignore. The human being is not just another creation. He is made in the image of God. This means consciousness. It means the ability to choose. It means responsibility. Man and woman are placed in the garden, in a perfect environment, in direct communion with God, without fear, without guilt, without pain. But along with this freedom, there is something fundamental: choice. Because without choice, there is no true love. There is no real relationship. There is no genuine purpose. And then the first great conflict in human history happens. Temptation enters the scene, not aggressively but subtly, questioning, distorting, planting doubt. Did God really say that? And this is exactly where everything changes. Because the problem was never just disobedience. It was the decision to trust one's own perception more than the established truth. And in that moment, humanity chooses the path of independence, chooses to follow its own will. And that choice brings consequences that echo to this day. Separation, pain, fear, guilt. But even in that moment of fall, something surprising happens. God does not abandon. God does not destroy. God begins a plan of redemption, a plan that would cross generations, that would pass through imperfect people, through difficult situations, through complex stories, but that would point to something greater. And this is how the narrative continues with figures who begin to shape history. Abel, Noah, Abraham, ordinary people with flaws, with doubts, but who at some point chose to trust. Noah, in the middle of a corrupted world, chooses to obey when no one else takes it seriously. Abraham receives a promise that seems impossible, to become the father of a great nation, and even without fully understanding, he follows. And here begins the formation of something that would change everything. A set-apart people, a chosen nation, not by merit, but by purpose. The story moves forward and we see the growth of this people, but we also see their failures, their falls, their constant internal struggles. And this reveals something very important. The Bible does not hide human imperfection. On the contrary, it exposes it, shows it, confronts it. It shows that even those who are chosen still struggle, still fail, still fall. And this makes the narrative real, deep, and relatable. And then we reach one of the most striking moments, the people of Israel in Egypt, enslaved, oppressed, living without freedom. And it is in this scenario that Moses appears, someone who initially does not feel capable, who doubts himself, but who is called to something much greater. And through him we see something powerful, deliverance. God intervenes, confronts the power of that time, and leads his people out of slavery. Not just a physical deliverance, but a symbol of something much deeper, spiritual liberation. But leaving Egypt does not solve everything. On the contrary, it begins a new process, the desert, a place of transition, testing, and transformation. And here we once again see human nature being exposed. Even after witnessing miracles, even after experiencing freedom, the people still doubt, still complain, still desire to return to what was familiar, even if it was oppressive. And this reveals something very strong. Many times, the human being prefers the comfort of the familiar over the responsibility of freedom. And in the middle of this process, God establishes laws, principles, directions, not as a form of control, but as structure, as a way to guide, to teach, to form an identity. Because freedom without direction leads to chaos, and remaining requires alignment. And as the story progresses, we see leaders arise, kings being established, battles being fought, victories being achieved. But we also see false, corruption, disobedience. We see the human heart oscillating between faithfulness and distance. And it is exactly in this cycle that we realize something essential. The greatest problem was never external. It was always internal. And that is why, throughout this entire first part of the Bible, a message begins to form clearly. Even if not yet fully revealed, the human being cannot, on their own, remain faithful consistently. There are always deviations, always failures, always moments when the connection is lost. And it is at this point that something begins to be prepared. Something greater, something deeper, something definitive. The problem of humanity is not a lack of information. It is a lack of transformation. It is not that human beings do not know what is right. It is that they cannot remain in what is right consistently. And it is exactly in this scenario that the prophets arise. The prophets were not just messengers. They were voices that broke the silence. Voices that confronted, that exposed, that called people back to truth. They did not bring comfortable messages. They did not say what people wanted to hear, but what they needed to hear. And this made them rejected, ignored, often persecuted. Because truth, when it confronts the human heart, is uncomfortable. And the human being by nature tends to resist what exposes their flaws. And throughout this period, we see something repeating constantly. The people turn away, God calls them back. The people ignore, consequences come. Repentance appears and the cycle restarts. Kings arise with promises, but many become corrupt. Leaders are raised, but not all remain firm. And this reveals something deep. Systems do not transform the heart. Rules do not change human nature. External authority does not resolve internal conflicts. And that is exactly why the messages of the prophets begin to point beyond the present. They begin to speak of a future time, of a deeper change, of a solution that would not be just external but internal. They speak of a new heart, of a new covenant, of something that would go beyond laws written on stone, something that would be written within the human being. And meanwhile, the scenario becomes increasingly complex. The people of Israel divide, face wars, suffer invasions, experience exile. Jerusalem, the spiritual center, is destroyed. And at that moment, it seems like everything is lost. It seems like the promises failed. It seems like the connection has been permanently broken. But it is exactly in these moments that the biblical narrative shows its depth, because even in chaos, there is a plan being developed. Exile is not just a punishment. It is a process, a moment of reflection, confrontation, inner rebuilding. It is when the people begin to realize that the problem was never just losing the land. It was losing the connection. And this changes the perspective. Because now the issue is not just returning to a physical place, it is returning to spiritual alignment. And then, after this period, restoration begins. The people return, rebuild, try to start again. But even so, something is still missing. Because although there is effort, although there is intention, the central problem remains. The human heart has not yet been fully transformed. There is still struggle. There is still failure, there is still distance, and it is in this silence between promises and expectations that something begins to form even more clearly. The idea that it is not enough just to try, it is not enough just to follow rules. It is not enough just to want to do what is right. Something deeper is needed. Something that touches the root of the problem. Something that changes not only behavior, but nature. And this is where expectation grows. The prophecies become more specific. The promise of a Messiah begins to take shape. A sent one. Someone who would not only teach, but transform. Someone who would not only guide, but restore. Someone who would not only point the way, but be the way itself. And at the same time, the world around also changes. Empires rise and fall. Cultures mix. External influence increases. And the people live between tradition and pressure, between identity and adaptation, between faith and reality. And this creates enormous tension because there is an expectation of liberation, but also confusion about how that liberation would come. Some expected a political leader, someone who would free the people visibly, who would restore power, who would bring dominance. Others expected something more spiritual, more profound. But in the middle of all these expectations, one thing was certain: something needed to happen. Something needed to change. Because the cycle could not continue forever. And perhaps, looking at this, you realize something that still happens today. Human beings continue trying to solve internal problems with external solutions. They continue seeking peace without transformation, continue wanting results without real change, continue repeating cycles and expecting different results. And this shows that although history advances, human nature continues to face the same conflicts. And that is exactly why the next moment in the story is so important. Because it does not come just to continue the narrative. It comes to change everything. After centuries of waiting, after promises, prophecies, failures, attempts, and repeated cycles, something finally happens. Something that not only answers questions, but completely redefines the path. After centuries of waiting, of promises, of human failures, of repeated cycles and a silence that seemed endless, something finally happens. Not in a grand way in the eyes of the world, not with political power, not with armies or imposition, but in a simple, silent way, almost unnoticed by many. The Messiah is born. And this alone already breaks all human expectations. Because what the world expected as external force arrives as internal transformation. Jesus enters history not just as another leader, not just as another teacher, but as the answer to something humanity could never solve on its own: the disconnection between human beings and God. And from the beginning of his ministry, it becomes clear that he did not come just to teach rules. He did not come just to correct superficial behaviors, but to reach the heart, to confront intentions, to reveal that the real problem was never just what man does, but what man is inside, and this changes everything. Because while many were concerned with religious appearance, with tradition, with external compliance to laws, Jesus begins to speak about something deeper. he speaks about inner purity, about intention, about truth, about a real and living relationship with God. He breaks patterns, confronts leaders, approaches rejected people, lifts those who were down, and shows that the kingdom he came to establish is not visible in the way the world understands. It begins within, and this is uncomfortable, deeply uncomfortable, because it is easier to follow rules than to change the heart. It is easier to appear than to be real. It is easier to maintain an image than to face one's own internal reality. And that is exactly why many reject Jesus. Not because they do not understand his words, but because they understand and do not want to change. And then along his path, Jesus does not just teach, he demonstrates. He heals, he restores, he transforms lives, but every miracle carries a greater message. It is not just about solving temporary problems. It is about showing that there is a power that goes beyond the physical, that touches the soul, that reconnects what was lost. But the deepest point was still to come, because the entire story built up to this point pointed to a specific moment, a moment where everything would be confronted definitively. And that moment is the cross. The crucifixion is not just a historical event. It is the center of the entire message. It is where justice and mercy meet. It is where the weight of human error is placed on someone who had no guilt. It is where love stops being just a concept and becomes an action. And this does not make sense to human logic. Because the world understands power as domination, understands victory as imposition, understands strength as control. But on the cross we see something completely different. We see surrender. We see sacrifice. We see someone choosing to love even while being rejected, choosing to forgive even while being unjustly treated, choosing to remain in truth even in the face of extreme pain. And that is exactly what changes everything. Because the cross is not just about what happened to Jesus. It is about what it means for every person. It is about the possibility of reconnection. It is about the end of separation. It is about the opening of a path that did not exist before. And then when everything seemed to be over, when it seemed like death had won, something happens that completely changes the course of history. The resurrection, not just as a miracle, but as the confirmation of everything. The confirmation that death does not have the final word. The confirmation that what is true cannot be destroyed. The confirmation that the plan did not fail. And from that moment on, everything changes. Because now it is no longer just about following a law. It is about living a new life. It is no longer just about trying to do what is right. It is about being transformed from the inside out. It is no longer just about human effort, but about a living, continuous, real connection. And this is where everything returns to the central point that runs through this entire story: abiding. Because after all of this, after the entire narrative, after all the building, the question is not just what happened. The question is what you are going to do with it. Because you can know this entire story and still live disconnected. You can understand all the events and still continue on autopilot. You can hear about transformation and still choose not to change. And this is the most confronting reality of all. The Bible was not written just to be read. It was written to be lived. It was not recorded just to inform, but to transform. It was not preserved just as history, but as a call to awareness, a call to change, a call to decision. And that decision does not happen once. It happens every day. Every choice you make reflects a direction. Every thought reveals an alignment. Every action builds who you are becoming. And in the end, it is not about how much you know. It is about how much you live. Because this entire story, from the beginning of creation to the resurrection, points to a simple but profound truth. There is a way, there is a direction, there is a way of living that goes beyond the superficial, beyond autopilot, beyond the immediate. But this path requires something: awareness, surrender, decision. And maybe now, after hearing all of this, you realize that you can no longer pretend you do not know, that you can no longer live the same way, that something inside you has been confronted, awakened, called. And this moment matters, because there are moments in life when you are exposed to truth in a way that cannot be ignored. And what you do after that defines everything. So the final question is simple, but extremely deep. Will you continue just listening, or will you start living? Because the Bible does not end as a closed story. It continues in every decision you make, and in the end, that is what truly matters.